Imagine discovering that centuries of our shared human past haven't just been forgotten, but deliberately obscured, actively removed even.
It's a startling idea, isn't it, that our timeline could be fundamentally flawed, leaving us kind of disconnected.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a concept our sources compel us to consider today. It goes beyond just, forgotten history.
It really does. These sources point towards something more deliberate, a strategic, maybe orchestrated effort to reshape how we see the past.
And that's what we're getting into. Today, we're taking a deep dive into material suggesting this profound loss of history, these efforts to erase it.
We'll also touch on the surprising role secret societies might play, and even how language itself could be involved in this narrative.
Right, and central to it all is this idea of purity of culture,
Hmm.
POC, as the sources call it, and how attacking that purity might serve some hidden agenda.
So our mission for you listening in is to help unpack these, frankly, challenging ideas.
We want to uncover the specific details from the material we've looked at and try to understand what these claims could mean for how we see our world right now.
Okay, so let's start with that big one. The core claim from these sources.
The idea that humans have lost at least 1,000 years of Western history. A whole millennium.
And possibly even more for other cultures, the material suggests. Again, not just faded away, but actively removed. Systematically.
The sources don't paint this as accidental, do they?
Not at all. It's presented as deliberate, driven by something controversially termed the bug and its minions, described as inhuman forces.
Inhuman forces. And their goal, according to this material,
Is supposedly to establish a power pyramid with themselves right at the apex.
but it's not a normal pyramid shape they describe, is it? Different.
Right, think of it as sharply inverted, like a tiny point at the top and this huge mass of everyone else underneath.
Almost impossibly balanced. A very stark image of concentrated power. Very few layers between the absolute top and the bottom.
Exactly, a very top-heavy, centralized structure.
Yeah.
So how do they supposedly achieve this historical destruction?
Well, the sources highlight a couple of main methods. First, there's the obvious one. Physical erasure.
Like attacking history by destroying artifacts, statues, monuments, that kind of thing.
Precisely. A very direct, visible way to sever those connections to the past.
Makes sense. What's the other method?
This one's maybe more subtle. Information control.
Ah, controlling the narrative.
Yeah. Think about how we access history now, mostly online, right? Compared to, say, 100 years ago.
The online versions can be very different from older, maybe less accessible physical sources.
And the material claims that when what it calls the cult, these supposed minions, is in power, it basically is the state.
And as the state, it actively scrubs history, removes the trails.
That's the assertion, cleaning up anything that might expose their alleged agenda.
There's a specific example in the source material that really kind of illustrates this, isn't there?
Yes, the Odd Fellows. If you look them up online today, what do you usually find?
Generally, they're described as, a benevolent group, a secret society, maybe a bit quirky, kind of harmless.
Right, a fairly sanitized picture. But the sources argue that leaves out some crucial history.
And that's where digging into older material helps, according to these sources, like that 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica you mentioned.
Exactly. Volume 19, Mun to Odd. It paints a very different picture.
What does the older source say?
It reveals the Oddfellows were actually broken up by steep prosecutions back in the late 1700s, early 1800s Britain
Broken up. Why?
on suspicion of seditious purposes, working against the state.
And the material puts this in context.
It does. It notes this was happening during a time of major economic stress in Britain, internal problems leading up to the War of 1812, the Irish famine, a real pressure cooker.
And the twist, according to these sources.
The sources suggest that the Bugs minions, when they were out of power but had this strong Republican bent, actually used the Oddfellows for sedition themselves.
So it implies they knew the methods because they'd used them, and later prosecuted others for similar activities once they were in charge.
That's the implication within the source narrative, yes. A kind of projection of their own past actions.
Wow. So given all this alleged manipulation, what's presented as the defense?
It comes back to that concept of purity of culture, or POC. The material argues maintaining this is crucial against the bug.
And the first line of attack against that purity
Is history itself.
Yeah.
If you don't know your true history, your culture becomes vulnerable, its purity compromised. That's the idea.
Okay, so moving from erasing history to secret societies, how do they fit in? You'd think secrecy would protect them.
Right. But the sources present this interesting paradox. Their secrecy is also their vulnerability.
How so?
Well, that core rule, what happens in the lodge stays in the lodge. It creates this impenetrable wall from the outside, but
It also makes them, as the sources put it, a perfect plum for someone with bad intentions to infiltrate and capture from within.
exactly that. The secrecy works both ways.
There's a powerful example tied to the Masons in the U.S., right? Late 1800s.
Yes, in the Northeast. The material claims the Masons were openly dominant in society then. Judges, police chiefs, everyone.
And it mentions a specific oath.
A very serious one, according to the sources. An oath to protect a fellow Mason from prosecution for any crime, even capital offenses, regardless of guilt. Jurors were sworn to acquit.
That sounds problematic. Did it cause issues?
Yeah, big ones. The sources describe a show trial where a Mason prosecutor supposedly deliberately botched the case against another Mason.
And the Masonic jurors acquitted him.
They did. But then some jurors apparently spoke out about it later.
And that led to...
What became known as the anti-Masonic movement, it even spawned a political party.
Wow. So this movement revealed the extent of the influence.
It did, according to the sources. It showed the entire social structure. Judges, school heads, prosecutors, police chiefs had been, quote, captured by the Masonic Lodge.
That's quite a claim. The material even mentions symbols.
Yeah, that some police groups in Boston still have Masonic symbols, like the black and white squares, supposedly dating back to when Masons heavily influenced the police structure.
And there's another even more controversial claim linked to this from earlier.
Yes, about 30 years before that Masonic bust out, maybe 1830s, 1840s, it involves the Underground Railroad.
What's the claim there?
That part of it in New York State was allegedly run by Masonic-based secret societies that were already captured institutions.
Which, in the view of these sources, meant the whole movement was tainted, polluted, as they say.
That's the assertion in the material, yes. A very contentious point.
So this all ties back to the idea that purity of culture needs transparency.
Absolutely. The sources argue that secret societies, with their internal culture sometimes at odds with the greater social culture, just can't coexist with a genuinely pure, transparent culture.
It's presented as vital for keeping society healthy from this perspective.
And what's really fascinating is how the sources portray the deep state when it's in power.
It recognizes this vulnerability.
It seems so. They often persecute the very secret societies they allegedly use to climb to power.
Like the example of Mao Zedong and the CCP.
Exactly. The material claims that once Mao was in control, the CCP ruthlessly went after the secret societies that helped their revolution. Why? Because they knew how dangerous those networks could be if someone else controlled them.
A chilling cycle of using and then destroying these potentially powerful groups.
So if messing with history and taking over secret societies isn't enough, what's next? Language. Chronology.
That's precisely where the sources go next. Language itself is framed as a tool for manipulation for polluting that cultural purity.
How so? What examples do they give?
They point to the Nag Hammadi scriptures found, they say, in the M4I desert. These texts apparently offer a conflicting version of biblical stories.
Conflicting how?
Well, they complain extensively about early Christians and a group called Talmudians, who the sources identify as Coptics. They saw the Coptics as a captured group with secret rituals.
Interesting. And the sources highlight specific translation issues.
Yes, some really critical ones, like the word archon, often translated as authorities.
But the sources say
It should be understood as a label, a specific designation, not just a general description.
okay.
Elohim, presented not as God, but as the plural of Eloha. And neither term, they claim, actually means God in our modern sense.
So fundamental reinterpretations. Any others?
The term chosen ones. The sources suggest the original meaning was closer to the ones who chose.
Chose what?
Chose to align with a specific Eloha named Adoni, described as maybe the 4th or 9th most powerful among them.
Wow. Okay, these are significant reinterpretations. But there's an even bigger one, isn't there?
There is. Perhaps the most radical involves the Holy Spirit.
What about it?
The sources allege the term, originally Raal, is a deliberate mistranslation by the Catholic Church, which they also label a captured institution.
A mistranslation. What was the supposed original meaning?
Get ready for this. The claim is Raal meant a spaceship that floats across water.
A spaceship. Seriously.
That's the claim in the material. If true, it would obviously fundamentally change the whole Father, Son, and Holy Ghost concept. It shows the alleged extent of linguistic manipulation.
Mind-bending stuff. So, if language is potentially compromised, what about time itself? our sense of chronology.
This is where it gets really wild. The sources claim at least 1,000 years were deliberately inserted into our historical record.
Inserted. Why?
To obfuscate what's going on, basically. To pollute our timeline, make it harder to see the real patterns.
1,000 years of phantom time? That's huge.
It leads to what the sources call the chronological conundrum. They point to the Middle Ages as evidence.
What's weird about the Middle Ages, according to them?
Well, they describe it as this long stretch, 800, 900 years, with almost no inventions, no nothing, no major personalities, a historical void almost.
And the personalities that do exist.
The claim is they look a lot like figures from 800 years earlier. Same life stories, basically, just with names changed and plopped into the Middle Ages timeline.
That definitely challenges the standard view. Do they cite anyone who's researched this?
Yes, they mention mathematicians like Anatoly Fomenko and also Florin Dudasu, who wrote The Lost Millennium.
And these researchers argue
That there are these soft, squishy spots in our accepted history. They suggest a major discrepancy. Maybe we're actually living centuries earlier than we think. Could be 800 AD, 1200 AD, or even just a 300-year error.
that's a massive potential shift. What does this imply for things like carbon dating?
Big problems, according to the sources. They argue carbon-14 dating is unreliable because it depends on the existing, possibly flawed chronology.
How so?
Well, if you assume a building is from, say, 300 BC, but it was actually built only 1,300 years ago instead of 2,400.
Then all your calculations about decay rates are completely off.
Exactly. And this affects everything dated that way, even things like ice core samples. The foundation is shaky, so the results are too.
So if carbon dating is out, what method do these sources trust for figuring out the real timeline?
They point to astronomy.
Astronomy. How does that help?
Because the positions of stars and constellations relative to Earth at specific times can be calculated backwards very accurately, they provide unique fingerprints for dates.
Like celestial timestamps.
Precisely. It's considered the only truly reliable method for serious chronology work, according to this material.
And this connects to Sanskrit texts.
It does. The sources place a lot of emphasis here. They claim a vast majority of untranslated Sanskrit texts contain specific ID markers.
What kind of markers?
Descriptions of the constellations that were active when the author was writing, deliberately included.
Ah, so those astronomical descriptions act like built-in date stamps?
Exactly. They provide a peg for that particular volume of history, allowing for accurate dating. Something the sources say is often missing in Western literature.
Making those texts potentially crucial keys to unlocking a truer timeline.
That's the argument presented, yes.
Okay, so we've covered manipulated history, captured societies, altered language, skewed timelines. Bringing it to today, what do these sources say about our present moment?
They frame our current time as an extreme age, a transition
Transition from what to what?
from the astrological age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And like any major shift, it supposedly leads to extreme things popping up.
We certainly see intense things happening.
Yeah.
Do the sources connect this to that purity of culture idea today?
They do. They offer the example of the Han Cultural Revival movement in China.
What about it?
The material claims the CCP is actively supporting it. You see young people adopting traditional Han clothing, rejecting Western styles.
Okay. And how do the sources interpret this?
They present it quite critically as a nationalist push for Han supremacy. They claim the CCP, being mostly Han, is using this to, well, the sources use strong language, attack other ethnic groups in China.
How many other groups are there?
The material mentions over 160, and it makes the very serious and disturbing claim that the CCP is, quote, harvesting a lot of them.
Okay, again, it's crucial we state we are reporting these claims from the sources, not validating these extremely serious accusations.
Absolutely vital distinction. We're conveying the content of the material provided.
Right, so besides these extreme movements, do the sources see any cracks appearing? Any hope for uncovering truth?
Yes, they suggest we're in a period similar to the late 1800s, predicting that secret societies are all going to bust up,
Implying their secrets will come out.
and that real timelines closer to the truth are starting to emerge. A kind of unveiling, maybe.
Speaking of unveiling, UFOs.
The material definitely brings them up, specifically the recent military confirmations.
But the focus isn't just that they exist, right?
No, the crucial point highlighted is how they operate on an energy system we do not have.
Which points towards
Free energy, according to the sources. The existence of the ether. Magnetic forms of travel that are pollution-free.
So the claim is this tech exists, and we might be close to seeing it revealed.
Getting close to having some of that revealed is how the sources put it, yes.
Okay, so wrapping this all together. Questioning history, emerging tech. What are the final implications for power structures, for our beliefs, according to this material?
The sources make a specific prediction about the U.S. They foresee big box churches consolidating power
Consolidating. How?
by joining forces and also drawing in groups described as Bible believers, non-Christians that worship and are controlled by a book. And the goal of this consolidation, to exert immense political pressure, to essentially try and bring religion feeling under government control.
Government control. How would that work?
By making it illegal, the sources predict, to express religious feeling outside of their approved structure, basically claiming ownership of Christianity.
Now, that sounds like it would cause problems.
The material predicts much chaos and political disruption as a result, potentially starting very soon, even this fall.
A really provocative thought to end on. A potential future where faith itself becomes a battleground controlled by the state.
It ties back to their central theme. We're lost in the woo. It suggests figuring out our actual history, our actual place, will take immense effort.
Really deep thinking, as they put it. So the question for you listening is, how will you navigate this complex landscape of information, misinformation, these truly challenging ideas presented in the sources we explored today?